Hi, I'm Rob, N1NUG. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Radioddity QT60PRO that they sent me to review and share with you. This radio is marketed and sold as a 10-meter radio, but I think we all know that most people that buy them convert them and use them on 11 meters, even though you're not supposed to. Having said that, I'm only going to cover the 10-meter capabilities of this radio in today's video. And I also have to mention, of course, that if you want to learn more about this radio, there will be affiliate links in the video description. Now that that's out of the way, let's take a closer look at this radio. Along with the radio, inside the box, you'll find a fused power cord. This, of course, has the standard 3-pin CB radio plug on this end and tinned ends on the other. Now, it's not printed on the wire anywhere, but I did a quick measurement, and I believe this to be a 12-gauge power wire. You'll also get an owner's manual. You'll get a bag full of the usual hardware, including a mic clip and thumb screws to mount the bracket. Speaking of the bracket, you will get a non-painted, non-powder-coated metal bracket with sort of the pivoting 3-position design. And of course you get the radio itself, the QT60, and with the QT60 you get the standard Radioddity condenser style microphone with buttons on the top and bottom, and this one uses an RJ45 style plug. Here's a look at the radio. Front and center, of course, is the LCD screen, and there's a bunch of stuff going on here. On the left side, we've got 3 different meters. The top one is the receive SRF meter, the middle one is the power output meter, and the bottom one is the SWR meter. Down at the bottom, we have sort of a status message, and when the radio is sitting idle like it is now, it just has the QT60 model number there, but when other things are happening, we get various status messages show up down there. At the top center of the screen is the current mode the radio is in. Right now you can see it's in FM. And then down below that is currently showing the frequency readout, but when we're in channel mode, it'll show what channel the radio is tuned to. We also have some smaller status icons in sort of the middle of the screen right here vertically, and those turn on and off depending on what settings are active in the radio. And again, we have more of those smaller icons here up at the top right, and then in the very top right corner is the band indicator. And we'll look at all of that later in the video. So starting over here at the very left, we've got a button labeled frequency and REP. If we short press it, it toggles between frequency mode and channel mode, and you can see the display changed to reflect that. If I short press it again, it goes back to frequency mode. Now, I'm not going to cover this in great detail right now, but we'll look at it later in the video. Long pressing the button puts the radio into repeater setup mode, and you can see that by the REP listed down here in the status window. The next button controls the band, and if I short press it, you can see the band icon up there in the top right changes. This next orange button that's labeled band toggles the band that the radio is currently tuning. Now, the way this radio is set up is that it has 9 banks of 200 kilohertz wide bands, so to speak, and short pressing this button toggles us between those bands. Now, there is sort of a 10th band register that has no icon, and basically what that is VFO or continuous tuning, meaning that you can tune all the way from the bottom of the radio's frequency range at 28 megahertz all the way to the top of the frequency range at 29.7. If I long press the button, we can turn the radio's echo feature on, and you can see that icon up here is lit up to let us know that it's turned on. And long pressing it one more time turns it off. So over here we have a dual control. The outer ring changes the radio's transmit power, and the inner ring is the RF gain control. This bottom control over here is, of course, the volume and on-off knob. We'll skip all the bottom buttons for now, and if we look at this top control, the squelch control is on the outer ring. Turning it all the way to the left enables auto squelch, and turning it to the right is sort of normal squelch operation mode. And then the center control is the clarifier. Now on this radio, the clarifier can be configured so that it changes just the receive frequency, just the transmit frequency, or both receive and transmit together. And then of course down here is the main tuning control, and as you've already seen, we can use this to change the radio's frequency, its channel, or we can use it to cycle through menu items. If we push in on the channel control, it's got various functions, including changing the tuning register. As you can see, as I continue to push in on it, I can cycle the various frequency registers. So just like the two buttons on the side, most of the buttons down here have multifunctions. Now we'll start off by skipping the menu button. We'll come back to that in a minute. The first button we'll look at is the mode and tone squelch button. Short pressing the button allows us to change the radio's mode. As you can see, we're currently in upper sideband, but we have lower sideband available, PA mode, CW, FM, and AM. Long pressing the button will turn the tone squelch feature on if the radio is in FM mode. Right now we're in upper sideband. If I push and hold the button, you can see we get an error message down here. But if I go over to FM, if I push and hold the button, you can see the tone squelch off shows up over here. Now if I push in on the channel control, you can see that the off part of the message starts blinking. If I then change the channel control, you can see I can cycle it between on and off. In order for the next feature, the dual watch, to work, we've got to put the radio into channel mode. So to do that, I'm going to push the band button to go into band A, and then I'm going to push the frequency button to get into channel mode. Now, if I short press the dual watch button, you can see the dual watch turns on, and you can see the radio is toggling back and forth between channel 1 on band A, which is what we had tuned in, and channel 9 on band I, which is what is currently set as the dual watch channel. If I want to turn it off, I just push the button again. Now the long press feature of this button sets the radio 10 kilohertz up from the current frequency, and you can see that's active by the little icon that's there. The next button, labeled RB, turns the Roger beep on and off. So if I short press it and then push in on the channel control, I can select one of the 5 available Roger beeps or turn it off as it was by default. Long pressing the button turns on and off the key beep. And of course, that was the first thing that I turned off when I got the radio. The next button turns on and off the noise blanker, and you can see by this NB icon, it's already turned on. Short pressing it just turns it off. Now if we long press the button, we can turn on the high cut filter. The next button enables scan. You can see when I short press it, the radio starts to scan until it finds a received signal, I guess. If I long press it, I can set the current channel into the scan skip. In addition to the VFO and channel modes that we've already looked at, the radio actually has 6 memory channels that we can program as well. And we can access those by short pressing the mem button. And you can see here they are, 1 through 6. If I short press it again, I'll go back to whatever mode I was previously in. So for right now, I'm going to switch back to frequency mode so that this is just a little bit more visible. But if I want to write whatever is currently tuned in on the radio's display to one of those memory channels, all I have to do is long press the memory key, and then I can tune in whichever one of the memory channels I want, and then short press it again, and this will now be written into the memory channel I just selected. Short pressing the emergency button lets us cycle between 2 emergency channels that are programmed in the radio. You can see here emergency channel 1 was programmed to this, and if I press it again, emergency channel 2 is programmed to this frequency. Now, this is again another feature that's probably more useful on CB than it is on ham radio. Long pressing the emergency button will lock the radio's control panel. You can see now that it's locked, we get a lock message down here and also an icon up here of a key. So now if I try and do anything, you can see we get an error message on the screen down here. If I want to unlock the radio, I just push and hold the button again until that lock icon goes away. Now let's take a look at the menu button. If I short press the menu button, you can see the function icon lights up there. Now if I short press the mode button while function is active, you can see that we switch into weather receive mode.
South winds 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts up to 60 miles.
If I want to get out of that mode, I just short press menu and mode again. Now, I haven't found any other function controls with any of these other buttons, only this one, but I could be missing something. So if you find one, let me know in the comments. Anyway, now to access the menu system on the radio, I'm just going to long press the menu button. I'll mention it now, but you may have already noticed it. When in menu mode or setting any of these options, the timeout is kind of short, so you've got to act quick. There are 36 items that we can control in the menu by using the channel control and selecting between them. You can see the index number is printed up here. The first one is mic gain, and if I want to change the level, I just push in on the channel control, and we can see that the setting is blinking, and I can use the channel control to change it to whatever I want. Menu item 2 sets the mic type, and we can choose between electric condenser and dynamic. Item 3 sets the volume control path. The default setting is main, which is the normal volume control, but we can set this so that it controls the microphone output as well, or both the volume and the microphone output. Item 4 sets the dimmer. You can see right now it's on max brightness of 5, but we can turn the backlight off or set it anywhere below 5. Item 5 lets us set the CTCSS or DCS tone for receive. And item 6 lets us set those tones for transmit. Menu item 7 lets us set those controls for receive and transmit together. Menu item 8 lets us change the tuning step. Now right now I've got it set to 1K, but by default it's set to 100 Hertz. But you can set it as high as 1 megahertz. I'm going to set it back to 1K, and then I'm going to get out of the menu system and show you that when I change the tuning control, the 1K digit is changed by default. You can change the tuning step on the fly when you're in frequency mode. All you have to do is push in on the channel control, and you can see that the digit blinks. If I push it again, you can see it moves to the next register, and then I can use that to tune with. The problem with this is that as soon as it goes out of tuning mode, it defaults back to whatever you had set in the menu setting. Now by default, the radio is set to tune 100 Hertz increments, which in my opinion is usually too small, at least for ham radio use. But you may want to choose to set it to something else. Menu item 9 is the talkback control. By default, that's off, but if you change the level, then you'll hear your transmitted audio through the speaker just like this. That's another one of those CB functions that probably isn't something that you need to use on ham radio all that often. Menu item 10 sets the duration of the timeout timer. Menu item 11 lets us turn on or off the transmit SWR protection. You can see by default it's on. Menu item 12 lets us turn on and off the voltage protection. Menu item 13 allows us to change the scan type. Menu item 14 allows us to change the clarifier behavior. By default it's set to R, or receive mode, and what that means is that when you turn the clarifier, it only changes the receive frequency. You can turn it off to disable the clarifier altogether, or you can set transmit mode where the clarifier will only change the transmit frequency, or you can change RT mode, which changes both receive and transmit frequency. Menu item 15 allows us to change the tuning range of the clarifier. You can see by default it's set to 500 Hertz, and you can select between 500 Hertz and 5 kilohertz. Menu item 16 allows us to change the default tuning method of the radio. You can see by default it's set to frequency, but we can change this to channel mode as well. Menu item 17 allows us to change the auto squelch level. By default it's set to 5. You can turn it all the way as low as off, or you can set it as high as 9. Menu item 18 allows us to set the transmit repeater offset. Menu item 19 allows us to set the dual watch channel. Menu items 20 and 21 allow us to set the 2 emergency channels. Menu item 22 lets us set the Vox level. 23 lets us set the Vox delay, and 24 lets us set the Vox speaker mute. Item number 25 lets us set the echo level, and 26 lets us set the echo time delay. Menu item 27 lets us turn on and off the weather alert, and item 28 lets us set the weather channel squelch level. Menu item 29 lets us set the level of the receiver digital noise reduction. And menu item 30 lets us set the digital noise reduction for transmit. Menu item 31 lets us set the Vox side tone level. Menu item 32 lets us set the frequency of the Vox side tone. Menu item 33 is an interesting one. This allows us to set the transmit bandwidth. You can see by default it's set to high or 4K wide, but you can also change it to low or 3K wide. Menu item 34 lets us set the FM deviation. By default that's 2.5K, but you can set that to 4K as well. Menu item 35 allows us to adjust the AGC. You can choose between slow and fast. And lastly, menu item 36 allows us to reset the radio. We can reset just the options by choosing OPT, or we can reset the whole radio by choosing all. Next, I want to dive into a few of this radio's extended features that I find interesting. I can't cover everything, otherwise the video would probably be 4 hours long. Now, if there's something that I don't cover here and you want to see it, let me know in the comments and I'll consider adding it in a future video. The first extended feature I want to show you is the weather band receive mode. Now this one's a little tricky to find because it's not labeled on any of the buttons here. But the way to access it is to short press the menu key and then the mode key. And now you can see that the WX lights up on the screen and we are receiving the weather band.
In northern Connecticut, at Willimantic, snow flurries, temperature 32, wind northeast at 8.
And then to get back out of weather mode, we just do the same thing. Short press menu and hit mode. Next, let's try out repeater mode on this radio. The first thing I need to do is check and make sure that the correct offset is entered in. In order to do that, I'm going to access the menu and I'm going to go to item 18. And you can see that's labeled TXREP. By default, the radio is set to a 100 kilohertz offset, which is the standard for North American 10-meter repeaters. So I don't need to change that. I'm going to leave it set where it is. Now what I need to change, though, is the transmit CTCSS tone. So I'm going to dial down to item 6, which is labeled TCDT. Now in my case, this is already set to the correct tone for the repeater I want to access, which is 88.5. But I can change this to any of the standard CTCSS tones. But again, in my case, I'm going to leave it at 88.5. In order to turn on repeater mode, I need to long press this button. So I will do that now. And then I need to press the channel control to set the offset direction, either off, minus, or plus. Now for North American repeaters on 10 meters, the standard offset is negative, so that's what I'll select. And now the REP icon is lit up on the screen, letting us know we're in repeater mode. I'm getting a little bit of QRM from my son's computer, which is turned on and directly above me. But let's try and key the repeater up and see if we can access it. N1, NUG, testing. Now hopefully you caught the courtesy tone underneath the noise floor there, but I was able to key it up. Next, let's try the digital noise reduction. I've actually got an Alaska station here that should be a good candidate to demonstrate with. Let's go into the menu, and we're going to access item number 29. And you can see that's labeled RXNR. By default, it's off, and we can choose sort of a level. Now, as I set the level, you can hear that received signal and hear what it sounds like as the different levels are engaged.
Yeah, well, nothing really changes. People go to work on time, come home from work on time. There's a lot of winter carnivals and special events here in Fairbanks and probably in Anchorage too for the shortest day of the year. Lots of outside time. It's pretty warm. It's +6 now, which is very warm for winter here.
Now when the digital noise reduction is engaged, you can see that NR icon is lit up. Next, let's do a couple of transmit tests. First, we'll hook up a power meter and a dummy load and check the output power on all of the radio's transmit modes. And then after that, we'll leave all that hooked up and we'll get the SDR going on the computer that's behind you, and then I'll transmit on the radio and let you hear what it sounds like over the air. I've got my Diamond SX100 in line with a dummy load on the back. The meter is set to the 300 watt scale and PEP mode is active. We'll start off with AM and see what that looks like. Okay, looks like dead key is right around 20 watts. And if I talk directly into the microphone, it looks like we're averaging somewhere between 40 and 50 watts with maybe 60 watts on those voice peaks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now if we take a look at sideband, there is of course no carrier power, but if I talk directly into the microphone, it looks like we're averaging between 40 and 50 watts and maybe hitting 60 on those voice peaks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In CW mode, it looks like we're putting out a carrier of 20 watts. And then if we look at FM, it looks like we're getting about 60 watts.
First, let's test the QT60 in upper sideband mode. This could be the worst disaster NASA has ever experienced. We've never lost an American in space, and we're sure as hell not going to lose one on my watch. QT60, upper sideband mode. Now let's try the QT60 in FM mode. The world isn't fair. It's just fairer than death, that's all. QT60, FM mode. Now let's try the QT60 in AM mode. Did you know that I build missiles? I helped to protect America. You should be rewarded for that. Instead, they give it to the plastic surgeons. You know, they lied to me. QT60, AM mode.
Now let's get the radio on the air and make a few contacts with it just to see how it works in normal operation. Just for reference, the antenna that I'm using is a Mako V58CB antenna. And the antenna is tuned for 11 meters, but it's close enough on the bottom portion of the 10 meter band that I sometimes can kind of get by without a tuner. So in the following clips, you'll see that in some cases I have a tuner in line and in some I don't. And that's mostly because I was too lazy to go grab it when I was recording those clips. The antenna usually works well enough in the bottom portion of the 10 meter band that I don't absolutely need it, but the radio is going to work better on that antenna with a tuner in line.
This is Kilo 1 Victor Whiskey Quebec, Rapota 413 Roundtable. Any takers wishing to check in, please come down.
November 1, November Uniform Golf.
Okay, I heard a very faint November 1, November, and I think it was Uniform Golf, I think. So let me write down what I have.
QSL, you got it.
You're pretty quiet. You're probably about a 5 and 3. I got my beam facing more north, though, so you're kind of on the back of my beam.
My SWR is not real good. I need to tune the antenna. If that were the case, maybe you'd hear me a little better.
Whiskey Bravo 5 November, push on the air. QRZ.
November 1, November Uniform Golf.
November 1, November Uniform Golf 59 US 6576.
QSL, you're 57 Connecticut. Thanks for the activation.
3 is Whiskey Bravo 5 November, parks on the air. QRZ.
November 1, November Uniform Golf.
November 1, NUG. Yeah, 5 and 8 in the Fairbanks, Alaska this morning.
QSL, you're 57 here into Connecticut. Thanks for the contact.
Yeah, Roger. We try to put a latch on the air over Christmas so guys can work their workout safe stuff. Appreciate the call and happy holidays.
November 1, November Uniform Golf.
Okay, Robert, Bob, QSL Bob, thank you very much. November 1, November United Germany. This is number 4, X-ray, number 6, Hotel United. You're 5 and 6 with me, 5 and 6, near the city of Tel Aviv in Israel. And the name is Rami, Romeo Alpha, Mexico, Italy.
November 1, November Uniform Golf.
November 1, November Uniform Golf. Robert, I got you at 5-9 here in Arkansas. QSL?
QSL, you're 5-7 here into Connecticut. Hey, thanks for the activation today.
Hey, 5-7 in Connecticut. Thank you for hunting in 73.
Overall, this is an interesting little radio, and one that you may want to consider if you're in the market for a 10-meter only radio. Now, there are a few things about it that I don't like, but they're fairly minor. The first is that the digital noise reduction is kind of buried in the menus there. There's Doesn't seem to be a way to turn it on easily with one of the front panel buttons. And that's a feature that I think I would use quite a bit, especially since the noise reduction in these types of radios is actually usually fairly effective at getting rid of some of that noise. Another thing that I don't like about this radio is the fact that the menu selections time out way too fast. I think you saw throughout the video, it even timed out faster than I could explain what it was in some cases. So I'd like to see that increased a little bit, or even maybe be user settable, so that if you like a fast timeout, you can leave it as it is, or if, like me, you need a little extra time, you can increase the delay. Another thing I don't like, and this is more of a nitpick than anything else, is the microphone. Now, some of you may not like the RJ45 jack. I don't mind that. I actually like those. But the microphone styling itself just feels a little weird to me. I'd actually rather this be a little bit smaller and sleeker and more modern looking if it's going to be a condenser style microphone. I don't really need the fake grills up here to make it seem like a dynamic mic. I don't know. It's not a big deal, just kind of a minor nitpick, really. The last thing that I don't like about the radio, and I kind of already alluded to this when I talked about the digital noise reduction, is just sort of the way some of the controls and functions are laid out and operate. Basically, the user interface feels a little clunky to me on this radio. If that were a little bit more well thought out, I think this thing would be a lot easier to use. Now let's talk about some things that I do like about this radio. The first thing I'll mention is that all the controls feel like they're pretty good quality. The knobs are not loose in any way, they feel nice and tight, and actually the knobs are a little bit bigger than what you'd find on most radios, so they have a good substantial feel in your hand. Same thing for the buttons. They're a little bit bigger than buttons you'd find on some other radios, and they have a nice solid sort of tactile feel when you push them. The radio also feels like it's fairly rugged in its construction. It may not be mil-spec, but it's not going to fall apart if you want to use this thing portable and throw it in a Go kit or a Go bag or something like that. Another thing I like about this radio is the LCD screen. Everything is big enough for me to read, even with my failing eyesight, especially the 3 meters. I like the fact that they're all there front and center. I don't have to choose which one I want to see. They're just always there, and they're big enough for me to read. Same thing with the frequency readout, and even the icons that are there, the small icons, they're big enough for me to see from kind of a decent distance without having glasses on. I also think everything on the screen is well laid out in a logical order, so it's easy for me to find the information that I want when I'm looking at the screen. I also think 60 watts is a good happy medium to give us enough power to make the contacts that we want to make with this radio while not being so power hungry that we can't use it portable. In fact, when I'm out on a POTA activation with other radios that are capable of more power, I usually turn them down to 50 or 60 watts to conserve battery power and find that I make all the contacts that I usually want to at that power level. So, like I said, this may be a radio that you want to consider if you're in the market for a 10-meter radio. And if you do want to learn more, I will, of course, have an affiliate link in the video description. Thanks for watching.